Today we are going to discuss about language as a tool of communication. In this topic, we will be highlighting what is language, an introduction into language, how is it related to communication of language, and the importance of language as a tool of communication. Let us start with the introduction to language. Now, language is the most important medium of passing our existing knowledge to every generation. A linguist has, a very famous linguist has said this or quoted this, that whatever knowledge we have today, the language is the most important tool to pass that knowledge to the next generation. Now, for example, today there is a technology that is working. Now, how our next generation will know about that technology? So, language is that means of communication. Many a times, students ask me about what is the importance of language, why a student of science or engineering should study language. Now, let me tell you, how are you going to transfer or transmit that language, that knowledge that you have acquired, whether it is in science or it is in astronomy, it is in physics, mathematics, how you are going to transfer that language? Because the ultimate goal of any knowledge is to be able to transfer that knowledge. And you cannot transfer that knowledge without language, be it a written language or a spoken language. That is why we say that language is a very, very important tool to communicate, to transfer, to disseminate your knowledge or whatever information you are having. That is why this quote stands appropriate for any language all over the world. You can see there are as many languages, and for all these languages, this stands true. You can communicate in any language, be it Hindi, English, Arabian, Sanskrit, American, any language you can communicate. But the purpose is ultimately, the purpose of language is to transfer the knowledge, to disseminate the knowledge to people, to others. So that is the introduction of the language that we have already discussed about. You can see those details in this slides. Now, when we talk about language, you have alphabets. Then you join the alphabets to create the words, and then you join the words to create meaningful sentences. Now, see how we move from alphabet to word, word to sentence, sentence to paragraph, and then a proper write-up. Okay, that is why we say that language came into existence centuries before writing the history of any language community. And when we change the word order in a sentence, we change its meaning. As I said, you join the alphabet to create words, you join the words to create a sentence. Now, what is a sentence? A sentence is the meaningful arrangement of words. And when we jumble or play with the arrangement of the words, we of course do change the meaning of the whole sentence. Now, various characteristics of language. According to eminent linguists like Noam Chomsky and Ferdinand de Saussure, you will see these are the various characteristics of language. Language is artificial. One by one, I will explain you: restricted, abstract, arbitrary, creative, redundant, and recursive. When we talk about these characteristics of language, we want to say that language did not originate. It is not natural. It is artificial. Language has evolved from human being. You cannot say that God has created this has come from something supernatural. No, that is voice. Animals are also producing voice, so that is natural. But language has evolved with human being. As human being has evolved, similarly language has evolved. That is why we say this is artificial. Now, next is restricted. You may be very efficient in your mother tongue, say for example Hindi, Bengali, Urdu, any language, or even for that sake English. But you may not be knowing Russian. So language has its own restriction, and it depends on the stock of vocab that you are having, your ability to use a language. Then it's abstract. Language is not concrete. So there is a society of language world over who decides. For example, I'll tell you, say for example today this society decides that we'll call the chair a chair. So you are calling it a chair. But when we change and we say now the chair from now onwards will be known as table, you have to adopt to that. That is what we say, this is abstract. the meaning can vary with person to person. It is not concrete. It is arbitrary. Again, as I said, the meaning can vary from one person to another. It is creative. You can play with the language. Some people have very creative language. They can write poems or very beautiful stories. So you can play with language. It is redundant. Redundant means while talking, you may speak the words with same meaning again and again, and the meaning may not be so clear. And somebody who is listening and not so proficient may think that you are speaking very nicely, but that may give a whole redundant sense. And then it is recursive, means it keeps on reappearing again and again. So this is about the characteristics of language. Now, this is what we have discussed. Language is recursive. It allows to express any idea, thought or feeling, as I said. Now, next point that we are going to discuss is language as a tool of communication, which is our major topic. When you have understood the basic importance and characteristics of language, you have the importance of language as a tool of communication. Language is a social phenomenon. I told you right now that voice is natural. Even animals can produce different types of sound. Sound is natural. Okay, but language has evolved with human being. So it is a social phenomenon. That is why we say man is a social animal. Language helps you to socialize. You can socialize with people. It varies according to the nature of the society, kind of people and their attitude. Very simple example can be when you are in your classroom and interacting with your teachers, when you are in the playground and talking with your friends, or when you are at home and talking with your siblings and parents, the language will be different. You will not be using the same language. That doesn't mean that you are a different person. You are the same person, but this is the natural characteristics of language, that it will vary according to the nature of the society. Your language changes as per the person with whom you are communicating. The social background of a person plays a very important role in the kind of language one has. Now, in India, English is a second language. We get an exposure to this language in our educational, during our education in school, college. Not very frequently we use it at our home. Okay, so it's a second language, a foreign language for us, but Hindi is our mother tongue. Now you will find a very small child born in a Bengali speaking family learns Bengali as a first language. Similarly, a child born in a Tamil speaking family learns Tamil first. This is acquired. It's not learning, it's acquired because language is listened and imitated. So the child hears the language, imitates and becomes proficient in that language. And that is why a person may not be very educated, but born in an English speaking family may be able to speak English very nicely, better than even a very educated person. So that is because language depends on the social background of the person, in what environment the person has grown up, what language he has heard while growing up. Next is language can be used for different purposes. It can be cognitive, informational, expressive, directive, fatigue and aesthetic. So for you, basically you try to understand when we are talking about aesthetic, fatigue or directive, we are talking about the creative part of the language, but when we are talking about cognitive, informational, we are mainly dealing with the academic or the professional aspect of the language. Okay, now these are the details. You can go to this, what I have just now discussed about the purposes. So these are in detail the purposes: informational, expressive, directive, fatigue and aesthetic. Thank you. That was all about language as a tool of communication.